How you doing, everybody? Happy Groundhog Day.
Hopefully you're not repeating this day over and over again.
I hope not. It was a work day. I really don't want to do it again. Every day is the same anyway, I guess. But okay. So what we're going to be doing... Oh, by the way, I'm Virginia.
And I'm Bianca.
We are the identical twins of the dying movie race. Alrighty.
And now we're going to start Oscar month with our picks for who should have won Best Actor each year. And we could only pick who was nominated, even though there's a lot of people who weren't nominated who we say should have been nominated.
Yeah, that's a topic for another day, I guess. But what we will do is we are going to go from the first Oscars all the way. 1965 is going to be our cutoff, because that's normally our cutoff, just as far as the classic era is concerned, and even though we're being generous. But okay, so we're going to first start with the 1927-28 Oscars. Alright, B, you can go first, but first she shall read the nominees.
The nominees are well, Richard Barthelmess for The Noose and The Patent Leather Kid, and Emil Jannings for The Last Command and The Way of All Flesh. And this is kind of an interesting year for us because we've seen both of Emil Jannings' performances, but none of Richard Barthelmess's, which is strange because we really like Richard Barthelmess, and we like, I know, it's one of Virginia's favorites. We like him more than Emil Jannings, but we have to say Emil Jannings from default. So we're going to go with Emil Jannings because that's the only one we can say.
Oh, right, yeah. I had an opportunity, I think, once to see the Patent Leather Kid, but it was long, and I was like, I don't feel like watching it right now, so I didn't, and...
Kind of regret that now, don't you?
A little, but honestly, The Last Command, Emil Jannings is really good in it, so it's hard to care that he won. It's a great performance.
Yeah, it is very, very good.
And what exists of The Way of All Flesh, because only the last few minutes exist, is touching. And like I said, I wrote in my Best Actor Reflective, I said it makes me want to see the movie, because it seems like, oh, this seems like a good movie. All right, let's move on. Not much we can say about that.
Okay, for 1928 to 1929, the nominees were George Bancroft for Thunderbolt, Warner Baxter for In Old Arizona, who won, Chester Morris for Alibi, Paul Muni for The Valiant, and Lewis Stone for The Patriot. Now, this is another interesting year because, and I wrote this in my blog about Warner Baxter, we really like him. Obviously, let's say he's very likable as an actor, but it's definitely not his best performance.
No, it's not.
It's not if you want to know what Warner Baxter's like, go watch The Prisoner of Shark Island.
Go watch Penthouse. Watch Penthouse.
Watch 42nd Street. There's so many good stuff to pick from.
Watch like all those great movies instead of...
I'll give a million. That's a good one.
Yeah, unless you are like a diehard movie buff and you gotta see the Best Actor winners like I did last year and I sat through this. It's short, but don't sit through it.
Yeah, and even Raoul Walsh, who's an amazing director,
amazing.
Even he can't really make it move. It doesn't move.
So who do you pick to win, B?
Well, I would have to pick.
Did you not see any?
Well, no, I did. I would have to pick George Bancroft for
Yeah.
Thunderbolt. Well, also George Bancroft is a very good actor. I mean, it's really a film that relies on his presence in performance.
Yeah. I don't think Paul Muni's movie exists anymore. I'm sure he gave the best performance this year.
Yeah, if I saw it, I probably would pick him because I love Paul Muni.
And only a little bit of The Patriot exists. Too bad, because that seems good. But yeah, between like Warner Baxter and George Bancroft, I'm picking George Bancroft. As much as I love Warner Baxter, I'm more of a fan of Warner Baxter than George Bancroft.
Me too.
Yeah, I love Warner.
And Chester Morris too, for that matter.
Yeah, you mean more of a fan of Chester Morris? Yeah. Then.
Well, I wrote a blog about him.
Yeah, we love both. Yeah, I love Warner Baxter, but in all good conscience, I cannot pick him. He won because he could talk. George Bancroft gave the better performance. It ages better. It's just a better performance.
It's a better movie, too.
It's better at everything.
For 1929 to 1930, it's a shame I can't pick Lou Ayres because he wasn't nominated.
I knew you were going to mention
I have to. It's a sin. Well, anyway, the nominees are George Arliss for Disraeli, Wallace Beery for The Big House, Maurice Chevalier for The Big Pond and The Love Parade, Ronald Colman for Bulldog Drummond and Condemned, and Lawrence Tibbett for The Rogue Song. Very good selection this year compared to the other ones, especially.
Yeah, it's better.
No. Oh god, this is hard. But I have to go with Ronald Colman. Bulldog Drummond, he's so charming. And that film is really ahead of its time. If you haven't seen it, please see it. And it's a lot of fun to watch. I mean, I love George Arliss. He's the one that did win. And we like him in so many things, and he is a lot of fun in that movie. But in all good conscience, I have to go with Ronald Colman.
All right, for me, I'm picking George Arliss this year, just because it could, mainly for what the performance could have been. It could have been, I mean, he makes the movie because the production, as you could imagine, for an early Talkie, it's a little stagey, and but he makes it fun because he plays it tongue in cheek, and he kind of like, he just is fun to watch. And it doesn't, like, I don't care that the production is like staged and it's so clearly just a film stage play, because he makes it fun. And that just, I guess, makes me warm up to it a little more than maybe I should, but I'm sure maybe some of the other performances could be better. I know some of the other movies are better, but I'm picking him for winning.
I think that's a very good performance. Okay, so that is a very good performance. So from 1930 to 1931, the nominees are Lionel Barrymore for Free Soul, who won, Jackie Cooper for Skippy, Richard Dix for Cimarron, Frederick March for The Royal Family of Broadway, and Adolphe Menjou for The Front Page. I'm going to go with the wonderful, fantastic Frederick March in The Royal Family of Broadway. He is hilarious in that. And that's not one that's kind of stagey, but it's really funny. And he really makes that movie. When he's not there, you're like, where's Frederick March?
I agree, and I guess it's back to George Arliss with this one, because I'm going to say Frederick March too, because again, he just makes what could have been kind of a stagey, fun movie just way better, because he is so much fun to watch. And, I mean, again, it's his movie. Even when he's, like you said, when he's on screen, you want him on screen, because he just walks away with everything. And that's the type of performance that's just, as far as early talkies are concerned, fun to watch.
For 1931 to 1932, the nominees are only three this year. Wally Berry for The Champ, who won in a tie. Alfred Lunt in The Guardsman, and Frederick March, who also won for Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Those are three very good actors, and three different performances. But I'm going to go with Wally Berry for The Champ. That's a very heartbreaking performance. It makes me cry, and you really like him in that movie, even though off screen he was an asshole. But in watching that movie,
For our blog last week.
but watching that movie, your heart just melts for him, and his relationship with Jackie is really good.
I'm gonna agree with you. I'm picking Wally Berry as well, and I think I do need to mention part of why this performance is so good is because Jackie Cooper is so good.
Absolutely.
I mean, it wouldn't work if both of them didn't perfectly complement each other, but even as a standalone performance, Wallace Berry is fantastic in The Champ, and again, like, even though he plays a loser, you root for him and you like him, and even when he does bad things, you're on his side, and that's just because he plays the part so well, and he plays him so real that you can't help but root for him.
For 1932 to 1933, we have three acting giants. Leslie Howard for Berkeley Square, Charles Laughton for The Private Life of Henry VIII, who won, and Paul Muni for I Am a Fugitive from a Chain Gang. And I have to go with Paul Muni. That performance just always sticks with me. That movie works. It's just even more effective because he's just amazing. And he's always amazing, but I think that's him at his absolute best. It's not only a great movie, it's a fantastic performance that just leaps off the screen.
Again, I'm going to have to agree with you, and no disrespect to Charles Laughton, who won, because he is terrific.
Oh, of course he is.
Yeah, it's Private Life of Henry VIII, but Paul Muni and I'm a Fugitive from a Chain Gang, wow, fantastic. He is, and he's natural, he earns every, feeling you feel. It's all through him, and he's the whole show, and that movie is one of the best. We consider it, the best prison movie of them all, and
we love prison movies.
We do. We've seen, I wrote a blog post about prison movies. I said even a mediocre one I'm gonna watch because I like them that much, but that one is above and beyond, and so much of that is him. So much. Okay,
so now for Best Actor for 1934, it's Clark Gable in It Happened One Night, Frank Morgan in The Affairs of Selene, and William Powell in The Thin Man. And obviously, I have to go with Clark Gable, who did win for It Happened One Night, because if you don't know, that's my favorite movie. And he's hilarious, and he's absolutely charming. He has to have every emotion, and he's at his most likable, which is saying something. And it's really just a whole lot of fun to watch, partly because of him and partly because of the other winner, who won for Claudia Colbert.
Okay, so this is kind of complicated because if Myrna Loy was nominated too, because she wasn't, but if she was, then I can say, oh, you can give it both to Nick and Nora, but considering that she wasn't, it is not fair to, even though saying that isn't fair probably, because it's just, you should just rely on the actor's performance, it just doesn't feel fair to me, and so I'm going to give it to Clark Gable, because, and it's one of my favorite movies too, even though it is your all-time favorite, it is one of mine, it's up there for me, and, I think he is at his best here. I don't think he's topped this performance. I think it is him at his best because he is funny, he is delightful, and again, I wish he made more movies like this. I really do.
I think he wanted to.
Oh yeah,
he's having a good time.
You can tell, like, even though he's being punished to be in this movie, which backfired on MGM, it looked like he was at least enjoying making it, which I read he pretty much was.
And when he made like kind of something like it. After Office Hours at MGM, you could tell he's having the time of his life because he likes playing parts like this.
Yeah, and he did a little later in his career sometimes, not a lot, but at least I guess it's better than nothing. But it's a shame because he won an Oscar for it. I wanted to see it more, but I guess that's part of what makes the performance so special.
He could have been the king of screwball, not just the king of Hollywood, the king of screwballs.
Oh yeah, he could have been up there with Cary Grant and Fred McMurray and all those guys, but too bad. Not that his other parts weren't great, but this is him at his best, so I wish we got to see more of it.
And for 1935, I think we agree on this one, too. So for Best Actor,
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, okay. For Best Actor, we have Clark Gable in Mutiny on the Bounty, Charles Laughton in Mutiny on the Bounty, Victor McLaughlin, who won for The Informer, and Frank Otone for Mutiny on the Bounty. And I go with Frank Otone. He's really, I guess, more of the supporting actor in this. This is why the supporting actor category was created, because they felt like they had to nominate Frank Otone because he's so good. But, you know, when he's up against other lead performers, I guess he didn't win, but I think he still should have won because the speech he gives at the end of that movie completely steals the entire show. And that's, every time I think about that movie, that's the first thing that comes into my head. And you're working with two other very good actors, but it's Frank Otone that I remember for his understated, beautifully done performance.
Yeah, and like we said, we agree on this. And if you've read any of our blog posts, you know, because I mentioned this a couple times, I think he should have won. And I know they had to split the vote, so that's already complicated and all that, but as great as everyone else is in this movie, I think he's the best, and I think it's also because when I first saw it, he impressed me the most, even though now I'm biased towards Frank Otone. When I first saw this, I wasn't. So the fact that he stood out to us the most at the time we were watching it, over, like, you know, all these great actors, that's something. And the fact that, again, we remember his scenes especially well, especially the speech he gives towards the end. I mean, it's moving, it's touching, and I mean, he played what could have been, like, the boring audience surrogate part in the movie, and he made it something special. And I think that's tough to do.
And I remember when we first saw this movie, we saw Through the Essentials, and Alec Baldwin was on it with Robert Osborne, and he said that he adores Frank Otone, he worships him, so it's nice to know there's another big Frank Otone fan out there. So for 1936, we got Gary Cooper in Mr. Deeds Goes to Town, Walter Huston in Dodsworth, Paul Muni in The Story of Louis Pasteur, who won, William Powell in My Man Godfrey, and Spencer Tracy in San Francisco. Now, those are 5 amazing performances from 5 fantastic actors. And I'm going to go with Walter Huston for Dodsworth, because that really was a unique film of its kind. And Walter Huston is always, I guess Walter Huston, he has such dignity on the screen, and his parts aren't normally the kind of parts you'll see other men play, but they're incredibly interesting because he's incredibly interesting to watch, and it's a special treat watching it, and he really keeps things humming with that movie.
Man, that is a tough tough list to pick through. All 5 are so good in their performances. I'm gonna go with Gary Cooper for Mr. Deeds, and
That was my second one.
oh well, Walter Houston might be my runner-up. But I think it's also because he just is so natural. Like, I feel like I believe every second he's on, and that you can say that with all Gary's performances. But I think there's something so charming about him in this, and I remember we showed this one to our mom years and years ago, and when Gary was on screen by himself and just acting, our mom was like, I don't think ever really saw him before. She was like, wow, he's so good. And it's like, yep, he's that good. Yeah, I think it's a natural. It's just a natural. Yeah.
So for 1937, we have another list of great actors in good movies. We have Charles Boyer in The Conquest, Frederick March in A Star is Born, Robert Montgomery in Night Must Fall, Paul Muni in The Life of Emile Zola, and Spencer Tracy in Captains Courageous Who Won. I'm up against several of them, but but right now I'll just go with Robert Montgomery for Night Must Fall, because this is really something different for him, and he really stepped up to the plate and proved that he could be different other than the nice little playboy who romances the girl and is funny. He really, again, he makes the movie because he's just so powerful and so entrancing while also being evil. And that kind of stuff wasn't really done at this time, so even though it's done to death now, that kind of character, you have to keep in mind this is a really early example of this kind of role, and Robert Montgomery is one of the early examples in film of someone who really perfects this character.
I'm gonna agree with you. I'm gonna pick him too. And yeah, it's a tough year to pick, but I think I gotta go with him too. And I think it's, again, because, well, it's like how we were in our first podcast when we did Underrated Noir. We were talking about Wendell Corey and The Killer's Loose, how he's both scary and pathetic. That is Robert Montgomery in this movie. He is both of those things, because you pity him and you kind of feel bad for him, but at the same time, he is a monster. I mean, it's the M type of performance, but it's done in a sort of different way, because he is a little again, more pathetic than sympathetic necessarily. So it's an interesting performance, and coming from Robert Montgomery, it's something special, because MGM didn't really let him do this play type of parts, let alone a serial killer. So it's something interesting.
And they actually told voters not to vote for him because
he was reportedly gonna win.
Yeah, because they said, someone at MGM can't win for playing a murderer.
Yeah, not a serial killer. Yeah.
In 1938, we got Charles Boyer for Algiers, James Cagney for Angels with Dirty Faces, Robert Donat for The Citadel, Leslie Howard for Pygmalion, and the winner Spencer Tracy for Boys Town. And I'm going to go with Leslie Howard for Pygmalion. I love that movie. It's one of my favorites, actually, and he's super, super charming in it. I think he's the ultimate Henry Higgins. There, of course, have been several other good ones, but to me, it will always be Leslie Howard. He really has a gift for comedy. It's not said nearly enough. When I see him in movies where he's funny, he's so charming. He just wins me over. He probably wins, I guess, the whole audience over with just how adorable he is.
Yeah, I'm between Leslie Howard for Pygmalion and James Cagney for Angels with Dirty Faces, because the one is more, they're completely different performances. The one is more funny, natural, and the other one is a little more showy, but I do think I might go with Leslie Howard too. And again, I agree with you, he is the ultimate Henry Higgins, and I think to me, it just feels like I'm watching Henry Higgins. I'm not watching somebody play him. I feel like I'm watching like a studious professor, and I think that's the type of role Leslie Howard was at his best playing, and this is the ultimate example of that, because this is him at the most essential of that type of performance that he perfected. And Pygmalion is also our favorite adaptation of the story, also known as My Fair Lady. It's our favorite adaptation of that story, so that might have something to do with it. We might be a little bit biased, but I'm going with Howard too.
For 1939, the big year for Hollywood, we have Robert Donat for Goodbye Mr. Chips, Who Won, Clark Gable for Gone with the Wind, Laurence Olivier for Wuthering Heights, Mickey Rooney for Babes in Arms, and Jimmy Stewart for Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. and I'm going to go with Jimmy Stewart. Because they're all, I mean, I have no problem with Robert Donat winning. I think Robert Donat is an inspiring actor, but I just have to go with Jimmy Stewart for Mr. Smith Goes to Washington because it's a tour de force, and he's everything. When you think of Jimmy Stewart, that's Jimmy Stewart to me, him in that movie.
I agree 100%. I'm picking him too. And again, I do love Robert Donat and Goodbye Mr. Chips, like you said.
Yeah, I cried like a baby watching that.
It is a good performance, but Jimmy Stewart is amazing. I mean, jaw-droppingly good. And Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, and like you said, it is him at like the pinnacle of who Jimmy Stewart is as an actor, but it's also, the movie is him, and all the powerful emotional moments relies so much on the actor, and he is 100% believable, 100% pulls it off. And I mean, I remember first seeing this when I was like in middle school or something. I first saw this movie and I just remember thinking, wow, this guy can act.
For 1940,
I knew that before, but it helped cement that.
It did. For 1940, there's a lot of good ones here. Seriously, any of them could have won. I would have been fine with it. But it was Charlie Chaplin in The Great Dictator, Henry Fonda in The Grapes of Wrath, Raymond Massey and Abe Lincoln in Illinois, Laurence Olivier and Rebecca and Jimmy Stewart, who won for The Philadelphia Story. But I have to go with Henry Fonda for The Grapes of Wrath. That is a career-defining performance. It's heartbreaking. It's poetic. It's perfection.
Yeah, tough year. Yeah, even though Raymond Massey is my Abe Lincoln of choice, come at me, Daniel Day-Lewis people, it's okay.
Yeah.
He's good, but Raymond Massey is better.
It's him, then Henry Fonda.
Alright, but I'm going with Hank Fonda, too, for Grapes of Wrath, and it is a complex performance, and it is a complex just character in general, and so much of that just comes from even, like, just these little moments when he's not necessarily saying anything. And I mean, the part of having to play somebody who's done so many bad things, and in the movie we see him make mistakes, but yeah, we're still with him 100%, and he still is almost kind of well, not almost, he pretty much is a hero to the audience. Is just comes so much from Henry Fonda's performance.
It's funny, the two Lincolns up against each other for us. Alright, 1941. We got Gary Cooper in Sergeant York, who won, Cary Grant in Penny Serenade, Walter Houston in All That Money Can Buy, aka The Devil and Daniel Webster, Robert Montgomery in Here Comes Mr. Jordan, and Orson Welles in Citizen Kane. And I'm going to go with the person who they picked to win, Gary Cooper. I think this is a really funny performance for Gary Cooper. He's super duper charming. This is, I guess, a quintessential Gary Cooper performance. It's an incredibly interesting movie too. It's a lot of fun. It serves everything: drama, comedy, war, romance, and he can do all incredibly well. And so it's a very delightful film to watch in its lighter moments. It's a heartbreaking film to watch in its tougher moments, and he keeps everything going.
Even though I picked him before, I'm probably gonna have to pick him too. For Gary Cooper for Sergeant York, and as fun as the other actors are, I mean, everybody is a lot of fun to watch who's nominated. Gary is just something special, and Sergeant York, he is perfectly cast, and it's, even though he's playing somebody a little younger than he is, I mean, I don't care, he's awesome in it. And he, like, the inner turmoil is believable coming from Gary, and a lot of what works with it is similar to why he works so well in Mr. Deeds. It is because he is human, relatable, and he seems real, but yeah, he's playing a different character. He's playing different character, different circumstances, goes through different events throughout the film, not even kind of really like Mr. Deeds, yet he can bring that same amount of charm into a completely different setting and make it work just as well.
Okay, 1942. We have James Cagney, who won for Yankee Doodle Dandy, Ronald Colman for Random Harvest, Gary Cooper in Pride of the Yankees, Walter Pidgeon for Mrs. Miniver, and Monty Woolley for The Pied Piper. God. Okay, Okay, several of these are my favorite movies. I'm going to give it to the person who they did give it to, James Cagney in Yankee Doodle Dandy. He's having the time of his life watching it, and there's a lot of great moments in this movie aside from just him dancing, like the scene where his dad, Walter Houston, dies. I remember Joan Leslie saying even the crew was crying during that scene. It's a heartbreaking scene in this very happy movie, and this movie is a joy because of him.
Yeah, I'm gonna pick James Cagney too. You thought I was gonna say Gary Cooper? No, it's just a joke because I picked him twice. But yeah, I'm picking James Cagney too because yeah, again, he just seems like like it's obvious this is the type of film he did want to make. This is the type of career he wanted to have. But at least we got it here, and it is awesome. And he is just always on, which is who George M. Cohan was. He was like that, and he's funny, he's touching, and he's able to do the heavy dramatic moments, which there aren't a whole lot in this movie, but he's able to handle those just as well as he is the more lighthearted moments, and he really gets to shine in those, not just for his dancing, but for even when no music is on, he is just as fun to watch.
For 1943, and this is another year where anybody could have won, and I would have been okay with it. We have Humphrey Bogart for Casablanca, Gary Cooper for Whom the Bell Tolls, Paul Lucas for Watch on the Rhine, Walter Pidgeon for Madame Curie, and Mickey Rooney for The Human Comedy. Now those are 5 solid movies and 5 solid performances. And I'm going to go with the person who they picked, Paul Lucas, for Watch on the Rhine, because that film would not work if he wasn't good. The whole film requires him being the strong presence, and it's not an exciting part, but it's an incredibly heartwarming, touching performance, and it's charming. And I know a lot of people disagree with this. I think it's because they haven't seen Watch on the Rhine. I think if you've seen Watch on the Rhine, you know that it's a justifiable win. I remember seeing this one list where they were talking about who should have won an Oscar, and they had him, and they had a clip of George Coulouris, I think that's how you say it, yeah. And I commented, I'm like, that is not Paul Lucas. Don't have him on there if you don't know who he is. I know, they don't even look alike. Like, that's, if you even see the movie, you would know that's not the lead performance. Well, anyway.
I found a clip on YouTube.
Exactly. That's what they did, and they just judged him for someone who wasn't him for his Oscar-winning performance. But it's a great film, too.
Yeah, and obviously, while just being a big movie buff and I love Humphrey Bogart, part of me does want to pick him. I might have to pick Paul Lucas just because it could just be a personal thing because he surprised me the most, and I think it's because this performance is like great if you want to know how to do like a slow burn. That this is a performance to watch because it builds and builds and it gets to this climax. And again, it's a quiet performance, but when it builds, it feels earned, and again, it's believable, but as it builds up and it gets to this climax, and he is, like, the whole center of attention, holy crap, he's amazing.
How many people can make you think of Bette Davis as a secondary character?
Yeah, exactly. Like, when I think of this movie, I think of him first, and then, honestly, I might think of some of the supporting cast after that, but yeah, I do think of him first and foremost. This is his movie, 100%.
It's a good movie.
Great movie.
For 1945, well, obviously they're all fantastic movies. A lot of them make me cry. For 1944, we have Charles Boyer for Gaslight, Bing Crosby for Going My Way, Barry Fitzgerald for Going My Way, Cary Grant for None But the Lonely Heart, and Alexander Knox for Wilson.
I know who you're picking.
Because when I saw this, I said, he should have won! Okay, I'm picking Alexander Knox for Wilson. Again, it's very much like Paul Lucas. The whole film requires him being good. It's definitely not an easy part to play. I think playing a real-life person is never easy to play, especially someone so much in the public light. And he has a lot of speeches, a lot, so that must not have been easy. But for a very professional stage-trained actor like Knox, it really comes through. And he I forgot I was watching someone playing Wilson. I thought I was watching Wilson a lot of the time. I'm like, oh wait, I'm watching a movie, so that says something.
Yeah, this is kind of tough, but I might have to pick him too. And I think a lot for pretty much everything that you said, but I also think it's this movie, it's kind of like with Disraeli. This movie could have been boring. But thank God the script is awesome, and Alexander Knox is the lead, and he is, and knocks it out of the park, home run performance. He acts like a president, and he's very stoic, but he's also very opinionated, and he has all these ideas that he wants to come forth, and the fact that they can't, it clearly bothers him, but yet he still has to be that president and be stoic. Yeah. It's good performance.
For 1945, we have Bing Crosby for The Bells of St. Mary's, Gene Kelly for Anchors Aweigh, Ray Milland for The Lost Weekend, Gregory Peck for The Keys of the Kingdom, and Cornell Wilde for A Song to Remember. And obviously, I know she's going to do this too. We agree with who won. That is, Ray Milland gives one of the greatest Oscar-winning performances of all time. It's a film that requires him to be good, and he is damn good. It feels so realistic. He is so raw, and it's really not a Hollywood film, and it's almost like you're watching a stage play, but it's very cinematic, and he just comes alive with his performance. It's heartbreaking, yet you can't look away.
Yeah, while the other years were tough and we were like, this year is easy. It is Ray Milland, 100%, not a doubt in my mind, Ray Milland. And I'm not gonna sound like with other performances where you might change your mind tomorrow. No, it's always gonna be Ray Milland as the winner for this year. And it's that pathetic performance, but the fact that we're with him, and no matter how low he goes, we're willing to stick with him, and that wouldn't work if Ray Milland wasn't fantastic, because a lot of it is not what's being said, but what's being shown to us, and so much, and obviously that's almost all on Ray Milland and director Billy Wilder. So, and the fact that we're able to go through this nightmare with him, and we really wanted to see him succeed, even though like he keeps doing all these awful things and keeps getting lower and lower and lower. If the performance didn't work, we would say, oh well, screw him, I'm done, but we want to stick with him, and that's amazing.
1946, we have Frederick March, who won for The Best Years of Our Lives, Laurence Olivier for Henry V, Larry Parks for The Jolson Story, Gregory Peck for The Yearling, and Jimmy Stewart for It's a Wonderful Life. It's a pretty tough year. I'm gonna go with Jimmy Stewart for It's a Wonderful Life. It's kind of a cliche, I guess, but
don't care.
I don't care. He's wonderful. He's both heartbreaking and humorous. He really keeps the film balanced between a feel-good movie and a really deep delve into his character of longing and realizing you've had everything all along. It's an incredibly emotional film, and he completely makes it. This film would not be a classic if Jimmy Stewart wasn't in it.
Yep, me too. I'm picking Jimmy Stewart. Don't care if it's cliched. He deserves it. He deserves to win, and he deserves to win, I guess, all the Oscars. But but also, and for a lot of what you said, I think this is a type of performance where you have to do everything. You have to be, deliriously happy. You have to be heartbreakingly depressed. You have to fall in love. You have to go through tough times, and he does it all, and he is fantastic. And just watch the scene in the bar where he prays and he's crying, and he's actually crying for real, Jimmy Stewart, and it's enough to move anybody. And so much of this movie is moving, and it is such a moving movie on its own, but he makes it. He just launches it to classic status.
For 1947 has Ronald Colman in A Double Life, John Garfield in Body and Soul, Gregory Peck in Gentleman's Agreement, William Powell in Life with Father, and Michael Redgrave with Morning Becomes Electra. This is a year where anyone could have won, and I would have been okay with it. But I have to go with, and I also think John Garfield's one of the greatest actors of all time, but I have to go with Ronald Colman in A Double Life. It's an actor's performance. He's incredibly believable in this non-quintessential Colman role. You wouldn't expect the debonair, sophisticated Colman to play I mean, you would expect the Shakespearean actor part, but you wouldn't expect the part of him becoming so involved in method that he loses his mind, and yet he's completely believable in it, while still bringing that sophistication that we often associate with Coleman to the role, that really gives it an extra oomph.
Yeah, I'm going to have to pick Coleman too for a double life, and a lot of why, like what you said, it's an un-Coleman part. It's a part that we know he could probably play well, but he wouldn't have gotten the chance to play it because it is like an anti-hero part, and his character is interesting because he is kind of a dick even before he goes nuts, but seeing that slow descent and how it weighs on his character is something to behold. And like you said, we do get to see him do Shakespeare, which is something he's obviously pretty good at doing. And it's interesting to see somebody, such a leading man type, play such a character heavy role and take it to such dark extremes. And the whole movie is him. It all revolves around him. And if he didn't work, the movie wouldn't work. And he works, so the movie works.
For 1948, we have Lou Ayres for Johnny Belinda, Montgomery Clifton The Search, Dan Daly for When My Baby Smiles at Me, Laurence Olivier for Hamlet, Who Won, and Clifton Webb in Sitting Pretty. And I have to go with Lou Ayres. I'm a big Lou Ayres fan.
Shocker.
Yeah, she knows. And this is a film that requires both he and Jane Wyman to be good. The film would only be half as good if only one of them worked. Both of them work. And Lou Ayres kind of has almost a thankless role because Jane Wyman kind of gets a showy role in this one, and the gimmick of not being able to speak. But he is very sensitive, very poetic, very warm in this portrayal. Very much what you always want Lou Ayres to be in your mind, and it's very heartfelt, and you could tell he likes this role. It's almost like Dr. Kildare, but with a bit of a different edge to it.
All right, if Humphrey Bogart were nominated like he should have been, I would have picked him this year, but he wasn't, sadly. So I'm going to pick the winner. I'm going to pick Laurence Olivier in Hamlet. And as you might imagine, nobody out Shakespeare's Olivier. Nobody. Once you see Shakespeare done by Olivier, you don't need to see it done by anybody else. You've seen it done by the best. But it's also what works with this film is, first of all, it's a passion project because he's directing it and he's doing it with such style that it's clear that his whole heart is into this and in this performance. But it's also, I don't feel like I'm watching a stage actor perform in front of a movie. I feel like I'm watching somebody who knows the difference between stage and screen and able to adapt a performance, the performance of Hamlet onto the screen into a cinematic performance. I don't feel like I'm watching a stage actor walk around and, try to put Hamlet onto the screen because that's the way they played it on stage. No, I'm seeing somebody who has adapted the part for the screen and it works, and his direction is great too, and it's also cinematic. But again, it's Olivier as Hamlet. It's the ultimate actor's part, and a lot of people would call him one of the ultimate actors. You can't do better than that.
1949, we have Broderick Crawford for All the King's Men, Kirk Douglas for Champion, not the champion, Gregory Peck for 12 O'Clock High, Richard Todd for The Hasty Heart, and John Wayne for Sands of Yao Ima. And I'm probably in the minority saying this, but I have to go with Richard Todd in The Hasty Heart. It's pretty different from all the performances on here. It's a very, very different role, I guess, for really anyone to play of someone at least at the time, of someone who finds out they're dying and how they deal with it. And it's incredibly heartbreaking but it's a pretty lighthearted film at the same time, and he really balances those two areas very well. It's must not have been easy to do, but he really, really does it. This film wouldn't be good if he wasn't good it really wouldn't be much of a film if he wasn't any good, and he is fantastic.
If I didn't see The Hasty Heart, I picked Gregory Peck for 12 O'Clock High, but I did see The Hasty Heart, and I gotta go with Richard Todd too. And first of all, it's also because of it's also somewhat of a personal thing, because I never cry. Unlike Bianca, who does cry a lot, she generally shows her emotions. I'm stoic throughout watching movies. I don't know why. I tend not to cry watching movies. I could count on my hands pretty much all the time it happened. But Richard Todd made me cry in this. It wasn't so much it was, I guess, partly the movie too, but no, it was him. His performance, the way he portrayed it, and it touched me and it made me cry. Not like I didn't blubber or anything, like nothing like full-blown weeping, but I was shedding tears. And it would just, again, it's one of those where the part is complex, and it is a little complicated to play, because he does have to play somebody who seems antagonistic at first, but who warms up to everybody, but it has to be in a way that you are with him and you understand where he's coming from, and Richard Todd does that beautifully. And it's just, it's emotional and it's touching, and it clearly affected me. And like, none of the other as great as I love all the other acting performances, but none of the other ones made me cry. This one did.
For 1950, this is a difficult year. We have Louis Calhern in The Magnificent Yankee, Jose Ferrer in Cyrano de Bergerac, William Holden in Sunset Boulevard, Jimmy Stewart in Harvey, and Spencer Tracy in Father of the Bride. And I'm going to go with Spencer Tracy. The winner, by the way, was Jose Ferrer, but I'm going to go with Spencer Tracy for Father of the Bride, because I think this is Spencer Tracy at his best, which is really saying something. He's really funny. You really believe him as this disgruntled father who doesn't want to see his daughter grow up and get married, and he can't do anything to stop it. It's full of a lot of inventive little bits, and he really makes the most of them. I forgot I was watching Spencer Tracy. I really thought I was watching this man. It's very believable, incredibly believable.
Yeah, lots of good performances this year, and I really like Spencer Tracy in Father of the Bride. That is one of my favorite performances from him. And I mean, Jose is probably the best Cyrano, and I saw Gerard Depardieu play it too, and they're both good, but I do think Jose is the best of the lot. But I gotta go with William Holden in Sunset Boulevard, and it's because, well, this is a part that could have been dwarfed by the larger-than-life Norma Desmond and Gloria Swanson's brilliant performance, but it's not, and it's still, I mean, it could have just been one of those audience surrogate parts, but it's not. It's a real character, it's a real performance, and when I first saw this movie, well, now when I watch it, I am constantly consumed by Gloria Swanson. When I first saw it, William Holden was the performance that stuck with me, the performance I took away from it, because he was so natural and he was able to stand apart from this larger-than-life figure and stand next to her and not be engulfed by this towering figure. And I think that even though we all know him for this performance, I think that he doesn't get enough credit for it. I think he deserves to be acknowledged more, because when we talk about this, obviously the first thing we mention is the character Norma Desmond and Gloria Swanson and maybe the script, and we'll say, oh, William Holden's such a great actor, isn't he? But we don't really talk about his performance here, but I think he is really good in this movie.
Yeah, I remember that was a film that made me go like, this guy's good.
Yeah.
1951. This is an interesting year. We have the winner, Humphrey Bogart in The African Queen, Marlon Brando in A Streetcar Named Desire, Montgomery Clift in A Place in the Sun, Arthur Kennedy in Bright Victory, and Frederick March in Death of a Salesman. And a lot of people are divided for this year. They're like, the Bogart fans think Bogart should have won. The Brando fans think Marlon Brando should have won. And we're really Team Bogart, but we have to go with someone completely different for who should have won. We're going to go with Arthur Kennedy. I know we both agree on this. Arthur Kennedy for Bright Victory. This is a fantastic performance by one of the finest screen actors, and it's not said nearly enough, but he really is. He completely like, he can't rely on his eyes. He's a man who loses his eyesight in war, so he can't use his eyes, even though that's acting 101. You have to use your eyes. But he uses body language, and it doesn't become kind of silly. It's incredibly believable. You really feel like he's going through this problem and adjusting to it, and seeing all of his faults come forward because of this. It's a great movie that should be on DVD, but isn't. But it's an even greater performance.
Again, I want to stretch. If anybody listening to this can put this on DVD or Blu-ray, we're just, anything, please do, because I will give you my money and I will love you. But, because I want to watch this all the time. But because like you said, I too got to go with Arthur Kennedy. And I know I definitely don't hide my undying love for him. And I'm picking him not because I was a fan of him and I saw this and I'm like, yes, he should have won because I love him. No, this is the film that I guess made me fall in love with him, because this is the first real Arthur Kennedy performance I guess I saw. I saw others before, but this is first one where he really got to act front and center.
And he was the lead.
Yeah, and he's the lead. So I came out absolutely blown away, because this is a performance that we've seen done more incorrectly than correctly, because so many performances like this of people disabled or blind, they're self-indulgent, they're pretentious, they're like the actor just acting. Not at all with Arthur Kennedy. He is believable, he is realistic. I don't feel like I'm watching an actor act. I feel like I'm watching somebody just being, somebody existing, somebody actually going through all these things. And that is, that's Arthur Kennedy for you. He is natural. He always is just real and natural like that, but this is him at his best. It's what could have been a soapy, over-the-top performance done by an actor who wants to show off, but it's not. It's done by an actor who knows what he's doing, who gives the movie everything it needs, and, it's amazing. It's fantastic.
For 1952, we have Marlon Brando for Viva Zapata, Gary Cooper for High Noon, who won, Kirk Douglas for The Bad and the Beautiful, Jose Ferrer for Moulin Rouge, and Alec Guinness for The Lavender Hill Mob. Now, those are very different performances.
Yeah.
I'm personally going to go with Alec Guinness and The Lavender Hill Mob. It's a hilarious movie, and he himself is hilarious, and I think it's a lot harder to be funny than it is to be dramatic. While that is also hard, I think really making a whole audience collectively laugh and enjoy themselves is underrated and difficult to do. I believe it was Gregory Peck who said dying is easy, comedy is hard. And Alec Guinness can do both, but he is really, 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 really funny. It's an incredibly fast-paced farce, and he becomes one with the pace, the tempo, the timing. His comic timing is impeccable, and everybody's good in this film, but he makes this film.
Yeah, all these performances are really different. It's tough to pick. This is a tough one to pick. And I guess I completely understand why Gary Cooper won for High Noon. I picked him twice already, so I want to try to branch out a little bit and talk about somebody else. I do, and Jose is fantastic, and Moulin Rouge, I might want to go with that, but I do feel like maybe that film is also more of like a cinematic experience, more so than an acting tour de force. So I might have to agree with you. I might have to go with Alec Guinness, and maybe that's just because I want to talk about a comedy, because I've been talking about dramas for so long. All these people are winning for dramas, and I want something a little different. So, but also because it's interesting he was nominated for this, because this is a full-blown out comedy. This isn't just like a comedy drama. This isn't just, not even like It Happened One Night, where it's a romantic comedy and it's able to have a little bit of that tenderness. No, this is a full-blown comedy with slapsticky situations, but yet again, you have to make this believable, and this is not like a story that could easily be bought, but we buy it. And it's because the acting is so fun, and they embody the parts perfectly. And like I always remember the scene where they're going down the Eiffel Tower, the Eiffel Tower, you know, when they're just running down it, and again, it could have been ridiculous, but it's so funny, and you're laughing every step of the way because they make it so funny.
For 1953, we have Marlon Brando for Julius Caesar, Richard Burton for The Robe, Montgomery Clift for From Here to Eternity, William Holden for Stalag 17, and Burt Lancaster for From Here to Eternity. Now, if James Mason was nominated for Julius Caesar, I would have a shoo-in. These are wonderful actors. But I think they chose the right winner with William Holden and Stalag 17. First of all, it's an amazing movie. It's a lot of fun to watch. Again, we love war movies, we love prison movies, so when you combine the two, we have a great time watching them. The dialogue is great because it's Billy Wilder. He's the greatest writer. But William Holden plays this really interesting character. It's like so hard-boiled. He's pessimistic. He's out only for himself. He's not very likable, but yeah, he is likable because he's William Holden, because he's awesome, and he's just and he's out to prove that he's not the informer of this group, while still being candid like he usually is, and being Mr. Know-It-All, which as a lesser actor, this man would be insufferable. But with William Holden, he's charming, he's funny, and this movie's a lot of fun to watch, and again, it requires the actors being funny and developed for it to really work, and William Holden certainly does.
It's funny, I was going to mention the same thing. If James Mason for Julius Caesar was nominated, I'd pick him. I would also pick Mel Ferrer for Lily if he was nominated.
Me too!
Yeah, either one of those, then it would be easy. This would be no problems. And while Stalag 17 is one of my favorite movies, I love it to death, I gotta go with Montgomery Clift and From Here to Eternity. I think, first of all, Montgomery Clift is good in everything. That's nothing groundbreaking. He is. Everybody knows that. But this is one of his best performances. And everyone is fantastic in this movie, but he's, to me, the standout. His performance, I mean, is just moving, and he plays a character that has a right to be angry all the time, but doesn't, and is pretty bitter, but isn't just complaining the whole time. He does try to put up with everything, and Montgomery Clift just plays him so down to earth. And in a way that, even though, again, there are certain actions that you disagree with that he does, or certain actions that are definitely out of, crossing the line, you side with him and you find him interesting, and he's an interesting character on himself, but he's also, I don't think I can't picture another actor in this part. I think it's him all the way. That you couldn't have another actor in this part. It's Monty's part.
And that was the first time I ever saw him, and I fell in love with him right away.
Yeah, same.
1954, we have Humphrey Bogart for The Caine Mutiny, Marlon Brando for On the Waterfront, Bing Crosby for The Country Girl, James Mason for A Star is Born, about time, and Dan O'Hurley for Adventures of Robinson Crusoe. Oh my god. I had a bit of my lips went wrong there. Oh, this is a hard one. I think they chose the right winner with this one. On the Waterfront is a beautiful, beautiful, poetic film. Incredibly shot by Elia Kazan. It's raw, it's realistic, it's gritty, yet it's also incredibly moving. And this is a movie that works because Marlon Brando's so good in it. I didn't feel like I was watching this big old movie star. I thought I was watching this poor man. It's very much like a part John Garfield would have. In fact, the acting itself is a lot like John Garfield, which might be why I like the acting in this film, because John Garfield is amazing. And they actually wanted him for this part. You can understand why. But he was dead. So and obviously the classic scene with him and with Rod, with him saying he could have been somebody, is so emotional without really going full blown. It's just, it's pathetic, but it's still it's really hard. It's words I don't think really do it justice. It's an incredibly touching scene, and a movie you wouldn't expect to be this touching.
I'm gonna pick Marlon Brando for On the Waterfront as well. And it's funny, at the time, Bing Crosby was the favorite to win, and he is great in The Country Girl. Although Humphrey Bogart is my runner-up this year. I think if it wasn't On the Waterfront's year, I would probably pick Bogart. But this, I can't disagree with Marlon Brando and On the Waterfront. Now everybody agrees. Oh yeah, he deserved to win. I think it's because this performance ages flawlessly. I think this is Marlon Brando at his best. I don't think he ever topped this performance. I mean,
I don't think so either.
Yeah, I think he's good in like Sayonara and other parts, obviously.
People are better in that movie.
Yeah. But I think this is Brando's movie, and it's Brando's performance, and it's him doing what he did best, just a natural, believable performance at the center of attention. And like you said, you just feel like you're watching this heartbreaking characters, and you connect with him and you relate with him, and you feel bad for him. And yeah, he's pathetic, but he's also, but not to the point where you're like, not like Robert Montgomery in Night Must Fall. No, he is like one that you really do sympathize with, and when you see him grow as a character, it feels earned, and that's so much from his performance. And it's just, I mean, it's an amazing film, and a big chunk of why the film is so amazing is because he is amazing in it.
1955. This is a good year. We have Ernest Borgnine in Marty, James Cagney in Love Me or Leave Me, James Dean in East of Eden, Frank Sinatra in The Man with the Golden Arm, and Spencer Tracy in Bad Day at Black Rock. And Ernest Borgnine won, and these are incredibly different performances too. They do a good job really spreading it out when it comes to types of characters. And I'm going to give it to Jimmy Dean in East of Eden. And I don't think it's, again, this is a part that must not have been easy to play at the time. Right now it seems like your typical late 50s film, but keep in mind this is 1955. I mean, this is one of really started a trend in filmmaking when you had sort of the Paul Newman character follow up with this, because Paul Newman played a lot of characters like this. But it's kind of like Marlon Brando on the Waterfront. It's pathetic and heartbreaking, and yet you know why he is so sad. You are with him every step of the way. You want him to be accepted by his father. Equally great performance by Raymond Massey. It's incredibly shot, but the way it's filmed, the breathtaking way it's filmed, takes a backseat to James Dean's performance. I think it's a great film, but it's great because James Dean's great. It's a classic because James Dean is a classic himself. If you ever doubt that James Dean is one hell of an actor, then there's 3 films, they're all good, and this was the start of it all, and it justly made him a star.
Yeah, part of me, a good bit of me, does want to pick Ernest Borgnine for Marty, because that performance touches me, but I think I also have to go with James Dean in East of Eden. And like I was going to say the same thing. It's pretty much like why Marlon Brando worked in On the Waterfront, a lot of the same things, and that this is a performance that resonated at the time, but is also timeless, because it's the emotions that James Dean shows, and that the performance that he gives is just, it's still trendy today. It still works today, and nothing about his performance has to be explained or has to be dug into. It's all there for us to see and watch it unfold, and it all works. And like you said, and also like with Marlon Brando on the Waterfront, he's front and center here. And like you said, this film, a big chunk of why this film is powerful is because he's just so good in it, and he's so and I know I'm saying natural a lot, but he is. I mean, that's James Dean in a nutshell. He just is.
Let's see, when he tries giving his father the money, I want to cry just thinking about it.
Yeah.
So 1956, we have Yul Brynner in The King and I, who won, James Dean in Giant, Kirk Douglas in Lust for Life, Rock Hudson in Giant, and Laurence Olivier for Richard III. I'm going to give this to the person who won, Yul Brynner, although I guess it's not really a typical type of performance that would win. I think it's an incredibly delightful performance to watch. It's funny, and yet it's also kind of sad, but I find myself constantly quoting his performance. He can be both distinguished and yet silly. He also has to sing too, so it's really not just sort of a he's goofy performance. He does have to carry himself with dignity even when he sings. And the scene just where he's dictating the letter to Deborah Carr and being like, etc., 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 send the male elephants out to make babies is the highlight of the film, in my opinion.
Alright, I'm picking Kirk Douglas for Lust for Life, and you probably...
I knew you would.
Yeah, you knew I would, because this performance is amazing. And this is another one that I forgot I was watching somebody play Mango. Not only does he look like him, I mean, I feel like I'm watching him. And I remember Michael Douglas telling a story about he and his brother, Joel's his brother's name, right? That's the other Douglas kid. Yeah, who's like the producer or something. Anyway, when they were kids and they saw this movie, they ran out of the theater because the scene where he cuts his ear off, they actually thought he cut his ear. And that scene alone should have got him, in my opinion, should have got him the Oscar.
That's not been an easy scene to do.
No, it is, oh my gosh, it's heart-rending, and it also shows how crazy he is and how messed up his mind is, but yeah, even though he's somebody so off the walls, someone we all know for, like, you know, our history, that he is nuts, that we can at least, like, feel sorry for him, we can at least be like, oh, well, his life doesn't make sense, so of course his mind doesn't make sense, but yet, I mean, Kirk could have played it silly or too eccentric, but he doesn't. He plays it like a man of passion, but also a man who is sick and needs help, but also has a love for what he does and a love for those close to him, like Gargan and his brother Theo. So I think that along with Vincent Minnelli's beautiful direction, it's a film that relies on this performance, and it works so well because of him.
Okay, we're getting closer to the end here. We have 1957. We have Marlon Brando in Sayonara, Anthony Franciosa in A Half Full of Rain, sorry, I read that wrong. Alec Guinness in The Bridge on the River Kwai, Charles Lawton in Witness for the prosecution, and Anthony Quinn for Wild is the Wind. And Alec Guinness was the winner this year, and I think he deserved to win. I know I already picked Alec Guinness, but he's a fantastic actor, incredibly versatile. He's one of the most endearing comedic actors of British cinema, and yet he's also one of the all-time great dramatic actors of British cinema. And The Bridge on the River Kwai is not your typical sort of role, I guess, at the time at least, for you to have a tour de force. I mean, you're really sort of the anti-hero here, and you even stretch that limit. It gets to a point where you wonder if he even is a hero anymore, because he starts out such a noble man, but he like becomes so attached to this bridge, and there's just these scenes where he doesn't say anything, but he's admiring his work, the bridge, and I always remembered that. And he never had to say anything. You knew what he was thinking. You knew what he was thinking at the beginning when they were torturing him, and you knew what he was thinking at the end when he saw everything he worked for being destroyed, and then he has to help destroy it. It's you have to go through so many different levels of the psyche for this performance, and he completely does.
Yeah, this year I'm back and forth between Alec Guinness and Bridge on the River Kwai and Charles Lawton and Witness for the Prosecution, because they're very different parts, and they're both pretty showy, but God, who am I gonna pick? I don't know.
I'm kind of upset Tyrone Power wasn't nominated for Witness for the Prosecution.
Yeah, I'm more upset Marlena Dietrich wasn't, but more on that later, I guess, next week. But I think I'm gonna go with Alec Guinness too, even though I also picked him earlier. but this part isn't even kind of like Lavender Hill Mob, and it just shows how versatile Alec Guinness is. But like you said, this is such a interesting part too, that it's so morally gray and interesting, because like you said, he's kind of an anti-hero, but at the same time you're like, oh, but he's admiring his creation and what he does. Who hasn't been there? Who hasn't wanted to started something and wanted to see it succeed? But none of us have been in the position that, oh, we're building something for the enemy, and basically something that can kill our own troops. None of us have really been in that scenario where our creation was put to the test. So the fact that we're able to still connect to the situation through him and through this performance, and even though we do he crosses a line and we're like, okay, you've crossed the line, man, you've endangered everybody, it's still real. And I think the ending, where again, that his face at the ending when he realizes, oh my god, what did I just do? Yeah. that says everything, and it's that like you said, that almost polarizing performance he gives, because how he starts out so noble, so admired by everyone, and then he becomes this obsessed like creator and wants everything to go perfectly, but it doesn't, and he forgets who he is. It works because of him, and it's so much of the film, and I mean, the film is him. It works because of him.
Okay, 1958. We have Tony Curtis for The Defiant Ones, Paul Newman for Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, David Niven, who won, for Separate Tables, Sidney Poitier for The Defiant Ones, and Spencer Tracy for The Old Man in the Sea. All excellent performers. Just get that out of the way. Yeah. I'm going to go with the person who won, David Niven. The reason why is all these parts are very big, showy parts. David Niven has to really work with this very controversial role. This is very unique for the time, and he doesn't get a big scene or anything. He has to underplay so much of it that you're almost surprised that he did win, but looking back on it, you're like, yeah, because he really had to do so much with so little. Because also you have to keep in mind, there's a lot of things they couldn't come out and say with this. And one that we'll talk about later, the Mark. These are incredibly groundbreaking roles, and it takes amazing actors to really pull through and make these characters sympathetic rather than just a caricature, and rather than being completely unsympathetic, this monster that isn't even given any development. With David Niven, your heart breaks for him, even though you know that he did something wrong, and yet you see him as a person. You don't see him as a character.
Yeah, again, kind of tough year, but I think I'm going to pick Niven as well. And again, it's kind of tough to say, because Niven, it gets so much less screen time compared to everybody else who was nominated this year. I mean, everyone else is the whole show. They're on screen the entire time. So it does seem odd to pick Niven above all of them, but just because you're on screen less of the time doesn't mean it's less of a performance. And I think just because Separate Tables is such a well-acted movie, and the fact that he's the standout, even though he's not in a lot of it, says something. And maybe if he wasn't such a big actor, he probably could have been in the supporting category, but and then he could have easily won that. But I think that it's a performance that is so much through not what is said, because like you said, they couldn't say a lot of it. The fact that he is a molester, and he sexually harasses and touches women, and the fact that it's able to portray him in a human way, and Niven is able to portray him in such a human way, is impressive. And I mean, there's never a point in the movie where you're like, well, he is such a monster, because he plays him so haunted that you and that you know that it's something that, and he says it's something he can't help, and you believe him. You're not like, oh well, you're lying to get out of this. No, you believe everything he says, and it's because, and if the performance was garbage, or even just okay, or not that, or just kind of good, it wouldn't work, but it does.
So 1959, we have Lawrence Harvey for Room at the Top, Charlton Heston, who won, for Ben-Hur, Jack Lemmon for Some Like It Hot, Paul Muni for The Last Angry Man, and Jimmy Stewart for Anatomy of a Murder. Wow. I'm going to go with Jack Lemmon and Some Like It Hot. I'm kind of biased. I'm a big Jack Lemmon fan, but this was a time when people really weren't nominated for comedies. You had to be really good if you wanted to be nominated for a comedic performance. And that movie is considered the funniest movie ever made, and a big chunk of that is because Jack Lemmon is so funny. It's incredibly quotable. You can watch it over and over and over and over and over again. I know I have. This was the first time I saw Jack Lemmon, and he immediately, when it went to my heart, he immediately made me laugh, even though I was just a little kid when I first saw him. This is the greatness of Jack Lemmon, which is really saying something. Jack Lemmon is a presence that will remain amazing for years to come, and I think this was a well-deserved nomination, and why not? Why shouldn't he win just because he gave a comedic performance rather than a dramatic one?
I'm gonna pick him to win too. And so many of the performances this year are good, and they deliver these powerful, dramatic performances, but this one is still a standout. Granted, I did grow up with this performance, so it's been with me for a long time. And I'm not stuck on Jack Lemmon like you are, but you know, like how you love him, but I'm not like that. But I think he's an amazing actor, and I do think this performance is him at his funniest, at his comedic best. And I think that let's just get this out of the way. He's the best part of the movie. Everyone's good in this movie, but he is the best part. He is so funny, and the fact that he's able, when he talks himself into being a woman and then he just goes with it, it's funny. And how he just dives into, like, how he's playing somebody who's playing somebody, you know, he's diving into this performance that he ends up taking seriously, and it's hilarious.
Who's the lucky girl? I am. I love that. 1960.
I'll never meet another man that was so good to me.
No, see, we're just quote this for this is what we do. For 1960, we have Trevor Howard for Sons and Lovers, Burt Lancaster, who won, for Elmer Gantry, Jack Lemmon for The Apartment, Laurence Olivier for The Entertainer, and Spencer Tracy for Inherit the Wind. In 1959, my second choice would have been Jimmy Stewart for Anatomy of a Murder, so I guess you can know where I'm going with this. For this year, I'm picking Spencer Tracy for Inherit the Wind. This is a performance that really, really, really needs you to be a strong presence, and who's a stronger presence than Spencer Tracy? Mm-hmm. And not only that, you have to work with Frederick March. You have two of the all-time greatest actors. It's indisputable. These two are top of their field, and you have them acting against each other. And Spencer Tracy really has to be, he plays, I guess, the more boring character because he plays the smart one. You know, you have Frederick March making a mockery of this court, while Spencer Tracy has to be the cool-headed one. But it's Spencer Tracy. He totally keeps you focused. You root for him. You listen to everything he says because everything he says just draws you in. Even though he doesn't like screaming, he says in his own quiet Spencer Tracy way, and that's why we love him, because he can make this really talky story really something interesting, really something you can't stop watching.
Spence probably does give the most natural and realistic performance this year. I do think I might have to go with Burt Lancaster, who won. It seems unfair because you can't compare those two performances. Like you said, one is cool-headed, calm. The other one is nuts, you know, and he's over the top, and he's heated, he's passionate, he's so rallying, but yet, Elmer Gantry is a long film, and it would bog down if he wasn't just so much fun to watch, if he wasn't, like, so impassioned and so so forceful that you can't take your eyes off him. Granted, if the whole movie was Arthur Kennedy, I would have been okay with that. But I also liked his character the best. But I think it's another performance where the whole movie is pretty much revolves around this figure, and he has to play somebody who's such a hypocrite and someone who you want to punch throughout the whole movie because you're like, oh my god, will you shut up, because he's preaching all these things and he really believes what he's saying, but he never walks the walk. He is such a hypocrite. And he has he has these quieter moments where you're like, even though he is a cad and he is a hypocrite, you're like, oh, but he's also human, and he's also somebody with feelings, and he is somebody who, even though he doesn't do what he says, he does believe it, and he does take it to heart, and he does just want to teach it to other people.
For 1961, we have, I know this is a year we agree on, we have Charles Boyer in Fanny, Paul Newman in The Hustler, Maximilian Schell in Judgment at Nuremberg, who won, Spencer Tracy for Judgment at Nuremberg, and Stuart Whitman for The Mark. And I'm going to go with Stuart Whitman. If you've seen my Stuart Whitman blog, I mentioned quite candidly, I think you should have won. Maximilian Schell's good, but everybody's good in that movie. I don't know why he deserves the Oscar. Does he deserve the Oscar more than Spencer Tracy did, or someone like Richard Widmark or Burt Lancaster in the film did?
Or pretty much anyone else in the movie.
Yeah, everybody in that movie's good. It's a collective effort.
Yeah.
So, but Stuart Whitman, that movie is Stuart Whitman. And it's probably the most controversial one we picked, even more controversial than David Niven. He plays a would-be child molester. And yet, and I know that you're going to think, oh, I don't want to see this movie now, but
you should see it.
But it really shows it's a psychological problem for him, and he is trying to get his life back. It's depressing, and yet it's understandable. You really see the pain that he has, the self-hatred he has, and that he's really just trying to get past it. You see a man tortured by his past and who just wants his life back, wants a life, any life. And so it's incredibly heartbreaking, and yet it has these little moments that make it so worthwhile, that really make you rejoice. You are completely with this character you didn't think you would be with, and you just really want him to succeed.
What is Maximilian Schell doing with Stuart Whitman's Oscar?
Give it back.
Give it to him. All right. So Stuart Whitman in The Mark. Again, it's a performance that I guess almost just through the synopsis you're against him, but he put you on his side, and that alone, and that was controversial at the time. People, like it's kind of like with M. You're like, oh my gosh, I am sympathetic to this man who's done something so awful and thought such awful things. But again, this is, and the way it tries to understand him, where he's coming from, and analyze him itself is interesting, and in itself makes this film work. But the performance is what sells it. The performance is what has you with him through all the faults, and even though we see what he did, and and you never can agree with what he did, no matter how desperate he was. You can never say, oh, well, that's a sensible thing to do. No, it wasn't. But you see where he's coming from, and it portrays him as a person, not just this straw man, not just this, like, pathetic little guy. No, he is somebody with a problem who wants to deal with it, wants to get his life back, and it's so heartbreaking, and there's so many emotional scenes where Stuart Whitman is just so believable that you're like, oh my gosh, I am on his side, and I don't think most movies couldn't pull that off. This one does.
It doesn't matter how good of an actor you are, this is a hard part to play.
Oh yes, definitely. A lot of the best actors at the time couldn't have played a part like this.
Yeah.
It's one of those rare performances that you see and you're like, I don't think a lot of actors could have given this performance. He does, though.
Okay, 1962. We have 5 great movies and 5 great actors. We have Burt Lancaster for Birdman of Alcatraz, Jack Lemmon for Days of Wine and Roses, Marcello Mastroianni for Divorce Italian Style, Peter O'Toole for Lawrence of Arabia, and Gregory Peck, the winner, for To Kill a Mockingbird. Again, she knows where I'm going with this. I'm going to go with Jack Lemmon for Days of Wine and Roses. It's really a tour de force. There's this one scene where he's in the padded cell, and he's just driven insane because he doesn't have his tender alcohol with him. And it's so pathetic. He plays such a pathetic character. It's really sad. You wouldn't expect the man that you saw in Some Like It Hot 2 years ago to give a performance this raw. It really updates the Ray Milland portrayal of The Lost Weekend, but he makes it completely his own. This is a man who brings the woman he loves down with him into this world of just booze that really makes him go down the ladder of success because they can't even take care of their own family. So yeah, it's a really pathetic role. But it's Jack Lemmon, you want him to get back up there again. He's not a bad guy. He just does this because he's addicted to it, and it's almost like it's just a part of him. And so even there gets to a point where he is able to get back, but his wife isn't. So it's just all through a heartbreaking, sincere performance by a great comedic actor.
This is a year that so for Best Actor, it's one that I might change my mind on from time to time because it's so hard for me picking between Gregory Peck for To Kill a Mockingbird and Peter O'Toole for Lawrence of Arabia. You know who I'm gonna pick.
I never saw this coming.
For now and for a while now, I'm gonna pick. I can't see myself changing my mind in the future, but it has happened. I have gone back and forth between these two. I'm picking Peter O'Toole for Lawrence of Arabia.
It's her favorite movie.
Yeah, it's probably my favorite movie because it's the one that I think about it all the time, and that's just to me that's what can be better than that, a movie that sticks with you forever. But I think what can I say about it that I haven't said a million times and that I haven't written about so many times? But oh my god, this performance is incredible. It's I remember, I think Premiere Magazine voted it as like the best performance ever, like of all time. Of all the performances, this one was the best. And yeah, so in that regard, first of all, again, I like the character a lot. He's so complicated and complex, and he goes through such a roller coaster. And you're with him, you're not with him, and all this interesting stuff. And it is pulled off 100% by Peter O'Toole. And and when you hear about the actual Lawrence of Arabia, he sounds a lot like this. Like it does sound like this performance that O'Toole is given, and how it just. One minute it seems like he's having fun and that he's enjoying it, another minute he seems miserable and he hates being there and he'll do anything to get out. And it's such a complex character, and he pulls it off 100%. I think this is one of the most complex characters just in any classic film, and I think it's still maybe in any film ever, but yet, if the performance wasn't 100% perfect, it probably just wouldn't work as well. And you get one of the best actors ever to pull it off, and pull it off he does. I don't want anyone else in this part. I only want Peter O'Toole.
I'm shocked that you picked him.
I know.
Okay, so for 1963, we have Albert Finney for Tom Jones, Richard Harris for This Sporting Life, Rex Harrison for Cleopatra, Paul Newman for HUD, and Sidney Poitier for Lilies of the Field. Well, I don't know what Virginia's gonna pick.
Shut up.
But I'm gonna pick Albert Finney for Tom Jones. He is, this also won Best Picture. And it's kind of not really the sort of film you'd associate with Best Picture winner, but it's a lot of fun. It's hilarious. It tells this incredibly amusing story. There's a lot of great actors in it. It's filmed very inventively with its tongue in its cheek, and it's just a really great watch. It's one that you could watch over and over again, which I guess can't really be said for a lot of Best Picture winners. And Albert Finney puts it all together in this little package because he is just so charming with that beautiful accent of his. And there's a lot of just hilarious scenes in this that he has the perfect timing for. And a lot of people now know that Albert Finney is a great actor, but at this time I guess he was sort of this just young handsome man. But here you really get to see the great actor at work too, because it takes a great actor to be this engaging with its character that's kind of like a roguish asshole. It's kind of like a sort of the part you would see Jean Belmondo playing in French films and Marcello Mastroianni playing in Italian films, and he brings it to a British audience with its British sense of humor, and it's just really enjoyable.
Yeah, that fun performance. I'm going with the winner this year. Yeah, Bianca knows because I do love Sidney Poitier. If he's listening, I love you. But alright, so, and I'm not just picking him because I love him and he's he's such a good actor and he should have won once. This is a performance where the actor has to do every emotion in the book, really. He has to be funny, he has to be like almost snarky and kind of like in almost like a caddish dickish way, but he also has to be serious and he has to be dramatic, and he just has to do everything. And I think it's amusing because it's a type of part that I feel like if they got like just, it sounds like a part that could have been written for like a tough guy, and I feel like if they got like a tough guy actor, the part wouldn't work very well, because you have to believe that he's, even though he does it begrudgingly, he does go along with these nuns and live with them and works with them and builds their chapel, but you believe that Sidney would do it. You're like, yeah, he would, but yeah, he would get mad and maybe storm off once in a while, but no, he would do it. He would stick and do it. You believe he would. And I think that it's because the character is interesting, but I feel like if the wrong actor played it, the credibility of the film could have fallen apart. But you've got the perfect actor to play it, someone who can handle all those emotions, who could be funny, but who could also be serious, and who could do both at the same time, who could like joke with these nuns but also kind of make fun of them, but also be on their side and willing to stick it out with them through the thick and thin. It works, and the film is all him. It's all him.
Now, 1964 had a lot of great films for a lot of female actors and supporting actors, so actor is kind of harder to decide. We have Richard Burton for Beckett, Rex Harrison, who won, for My Fair Lady, Peter O'Toole for Beckett, Anthony Quinn for Zorba the Greek, and Peter Sellers for Doctor Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. Love the Bomb, as the trailer goes. So I'll go with the winner, Rex Harrison, even though Leslie Howard is my essential Henry Higgins. Rex Harrison does make this part his own. It's not a carbon copy of Leslie Howard. This is like the essential Rex Harrison. It's Rex Harrison, and it's Rex Harrisoniest. And what you told me about I'm going to pass into her face. Now when I hear that song, him sing that song, I cry now. Like I want to cry because he's saying this for Kay Kendall every night at the stage, and so in the movie when he sings this song, it's heartbreaking because she's dead. So the person he sang this song for, I can't. Okay,
Can't do it.
But just knowing that really makes that moment. And he's and also Rex Harrison is very talented with comedy. And so I really like him, like, sort of cursing the damn. It's like, it's really funny because he does it in such a charming, funny way.
He's still a gentleman. I like all the performances this year. I do.
What shocker!
I know. You can't pick between Richard Burton and Peter O'Toole for Beckett. They're both that movie. And again, Anthony Quinn's fun. Rex Harrison's fun. Gotta go with Peter Sellers.
Love him.
Yeah, Peter Sellers. Okay, first off, it's kind of not fair because he's playing 3 parts here, and all the other actors were playing 1. But it's also because all the 3 parts are incredibly different. The one is just flat out silly. The other one is more likable, reasonable, more easier to side with, and the other one is just trying to get through it all with a level head. But it's again, all the performances in this film are amusing, but obviously Peter Sellers is front and center, right where he should be, and given all these opportunities to be funny but also show other sides of him, it's a tour de force. What else could it be? All 3 performances he pulls off completely, and I especially like his performance in Strangelove because I think it's I think everybody does too. I think it's really funny. It makes me laugh, and it's the fact that he's so clearly a Nazi and nobody seems to really notice. It's funny. It makes me laugh, and that's what Peter Sellers does in this movie. He makes you burst out laughing in one scene, but then he makes you think in the other scene, and that's something.
Okay, so 1965. Well, the person who I normally would pick wasn't nominated. He won the Golden Globe, but he wasn't nominated. So Omar Sharif for Dr. Zhivago, which would have made this year very easy for me. But okay, so we have Richard Burton for The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, Lee Marvin for Cat Ballou, even though he wasn't nominated for Ship of Fools, which he probably should have been. Laurence Olivier in Othello, Rod Steiger in The Pawnbroker, and Oscar Werner in Ship of Fools. And Lee Marvin won, and he's one of my favorite actors, and I will love him forever. And I'm gonna go with Oscar Werner in Ship of Fools. And Vivien Leigh wasn't nominated for that either. Let's keep that in mind. Let's let that sink in. But Oscar Werner is, well, everybody is great in this movie, but that his scene, this one scene, I won't spoil anything, but this one scene, I know
what you're talking about,
will always stick in my mind forever. And he plays this character. It's not a pitiful character. It's kind of heartbreaking, but not in a, oh, look at him, he's sulky, he's heartbreaking. It's a very distinguished character. He made his bed, he's lying in it, he's not happy, but he just keeps doing what he's doing, living day to day. Then he meets Simone Signore, and they have an affair, and both of them like feel something again, but it can never be. And so you get to see this romantic side of Oscar Werner. And he's a very underrated actor as it is, but just his final scene is one of the highlights of the film, along with Vivien Leigh beating up Lee Marvin. Everybody is fantastic in that movie. It's a fantastic movie itself. I adore this movie. This is the kind of movie I like. But for that one scene, I will go with Oscar Werner.
Alright, I'm between Richard Burton for Spy Who Came In From a Cult. I know, he's one of my favorite actors, so shocker. And
both of our favorite actors were nominated.
Yeah, and Rod Steiger for The Pawnbroker. Both are tough to pick through, because Richard is more stoic because he has to be obviously playing a spy, and
he's cold.
Yeah, he is very cold though. And Rod has to be stoic but also show more emotion. Like, he does have these breaking points and everything that Richard only has at the very end of Spy Who Came In From the Cold. So I guess just because it's the showier part, I'll go with Rod, even though like my bias wants to go with Richard Burton. Even though I'm a fan of both actors, I like both actors a lot. My bias does want to go with Richard Burton because I like him so much and I really wanted him to win once. And I do think this is one of his absolute best performances. And so if it was just me personally just saying and trying not to be objective, I would pick Richard Burton probably. But looking objectively at this, and also with the performance that you feel like should win, I'll go with Rod. The film is really incredible, and it's tough, and I can understand if some people are turned off by it, given the subject matter of, concentration camps, Holocaust, and the aftermath of that. But that's the thing, you get to see the aftermath of how this affects somebody, and it could have been over the top and overly sentimental and too harsh, but he makes it real. And there's a really heartbreaking speech he gives pretty early in the film about his standing at this point, and how everyone looks down at him now, being like this, he's just a pawnbroker and everyone picks on him, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is the word, this is so heartbreaking. And again, it's a performance that it is an actor being able to show what he does, but it is still real. Okay, so that's it for this week. Next week
is Best Actresses.
Yeah, that's gonna be fun and probably just as tough as this one was.
Maybe tougher, actually.
Oh, that's true. But there's probably gonna be more people that we're gonna be like, this person should have been nominated. That'll be interesting to see. All right, so if you want to watch some movies this weekend on our blog posts playing on TCM, Bianca didn't have any over the weekend. All her films already played. I recommended 2 films. One is Somebody Up There Likes Me.
See it if you haven't.
Yeah. You also get to see some, Steve McQueen and Robert Loggia in all early parts, so that's fun. And the other one I recommended, a lot of you might have probably saw this one, but if you didn't, definitely check it out. Black Narcissus, Pal Pressburger.
The great Jack Hardis.
Who did the cinematography. This film is gorgeous.
Like all their films.
Yeah. All their films, worth watching with Pal Pressburger, yeah.
Even the lesser ones, you could still watch them.
Yeah. Even the ones that aren't in color, yeah. I love Contraband, man.
I love that movie.
Yeah. And, love our glorious small background.
Yeah.
All right. So, see you then, and it should be fun, and I'm sure we'll have a lot of similarities and still some disagreements.
Yeah, but we respect each other's opinions.
No, there weren't any that you picked that I was like, really?
I know, I was like, Virginia, why did you pick mine?
Yeah, why didn't you agree with me on everything? I hate you.
We already agree with each other on so many stuff.
You should have picked Peter O'Toole, damn it. No. Well,
you should have picked Jack Lemmon more.
All right, see you then.